I'm looking forward to tonight.
Thank you. Now, Joe, I read up on your background, and I know you've joined you started a Christian paranormal group, and and you have a talk show as well. But the reason I asked you on the show was because I want to know why you co-authored this book and why you picked the Sallie House.
That is a very, that's an interesting, it's a great question, and I get that all the time. Why the Sallie House? And I'll be totally honest with you. When I got into the paranormal, as far as investigating on a scientific level, I had met a lot of investigators in the field, a lot of demonologists, worked with Keith Johnson, formerly of TAPS, and of course, he's with New England Anomalies Research, and I met a lot of people in the field. And one thing that really struck a chord with me is, are all these paranormal things that are happening real? I mean, guarantee, I know there's another dimension and this world exists, but to what extent it was. So I wanted to take the most haunted location, or one of the most haunted locations in Atchison, Kansas, just happens to be, back in 2009, I believe it was on the top 10 list for most haunted places in America.
It's still there, yeah.
Okay, and I just wanted to take a situation like the Sallie House and see if there's any validity. So I got a film crew to go in there, a producer to go in there, and to film a 3-day investigation in the home.
Okay, so what crew did you bring with you? Your team?
Well, what happened was I had the group that I was working with at the time. I had 2 investigators that were willing to come on the investigation with me. I went and I searched a bunch of local producers and film crews and trying to see if I can get somebody to take a bite on this, to at least be there to film the investigation. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to have whatever I was going to say and do and happen, I wanted to have it on camera. I wanted to make sure that what I was doing and what we could pick up for evidence would be available for everybody to see. Whether there was anything in that house or not, I still wasn't sure at the time. So I picked a film crew, a guy in Providence, Rhode Island, who was willing to take a shot to say, you know what, I'll bring my camera, I'll go with you, let's see what we can come up with in the home.
Wow. Okay, so you spent 3 days there?
3 days in the home, and the most fascinating part of it was I managed to interview, just before we went on the investigation, I got in touch with the former residents of the home, which was Deborah and Tony Pickman, and they just so happened to be that they agreed to come on our radio show at the time, and, gave me a little briefing on everything that was going on when they were in the home, and they would be more than happy to meet with us when we arrived in Kansas, and, we could interview them, ask them a bunch of questions, and even have them come in the home with us, if we invited them, and we did. We took them in the home, and that's when everything just took right off. I have to say that, for anybody that's out there listening, the Sallie House has a lot of mystery. There's a lot of speculation. There are a lot of, is this true? Is this not true? Who's making it up? Is it demonic? Is it human spirits? I mean, there's a bunch of questions, and it's just a gray, it's just a shaded area when it comes to the Sallie House. It's amazing all the publicity that the home gets.
Now, did you check on the history of the home before you started your investigation, or you spent your 3 days there? Did you check back to see who was living in the house? What was going on prior to your investigating there? Had you checked all of that out?
Well, what I wanted to do was, I wanted to definitely do a little research on Atchison, Kansas, that whole area, the bed and breakfast that was across the street from the Sallie House, which is called the Glick Mansion. There's a couple of restaurants, and the whole area, as a whole, there's the Gargoyle Mansion, which is only 2 blocks down from there, and just try to see what happened back in the day and how this name Sallie and everything started. And you know what? A lot of it is speculation. It's legends. The named Miss Sallie who had bad stomach aches, and she had complications, and she had died. And
But I don't think her name was Sallie.
Sorry.
I don't think her name was Sallie, Joe. I know there was a little, according to legend, the little girl died on the operating table because of Dr. Finney. I guess he didn't give her, I don't know what he did, something about anesthesia, but I don't think the name was Sallie came up. I think the Sallie name came from another people that were renting the house. The little girl had an imaginary friend named Sallie. Now, whether she named her Sallie or the little ghost gave herself that name, I don't know.
Well, that is true, and you make a good point right there. But believe it or not, one of the legends takes you back to the 1906, where they talk about a little girl supposedly who was named Sallie, was brought to the doctor for severe stomach aches.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know her name was actually Sallie.
That's one of the legends, having a stomach ache, and he determined that she was suffering from appendicitis.
Right.
She panicked, she refused, and then she died on the operating table. That's only one legend of many speculations, and that's why when I went into this home, I knew there was a lot of stories, there was history, there was legends, there was truth, there was speculation. That's why I wanted to get a little bit of knowledge, but make sure when I went in there, I went into it kind of like blind from anything that was happening and focused on, okay, I'm going to go in this home as if there was no history behind it, and let me see if there's any truth to any type of paranormal activity in this home. And that's how I wanted to lead our team into it.
Great, yeah, right. Okay, so let's move forward to the investigation in your 3 days there.
Okay, well, I had met Deborah and Tony. We arrived there probably about 6:30 at night. We went in there, and we met Deborah and Tony. They came in the house. They actually gave us a tour of the house and when they lived there, going from the living room and then upstairs into the bedrooms, downstairs in the basement, which is an area there's a little crawl space in the basement, which they refer to as the vortex. They kind of gave us a little history. We sat down at the kitchen table. Deborah had her laptop open, showing us some pictures and some of the orbs and the things that they captured there. And this was the most defining moment right here. There was 5, 6 of us right all at the table, and we all began to smell. We had the smell of flowers, lilacs. I mean, we would just get all different types of smells that were going on. And I remember Tony Pickman saying, "What is that smell?" And we're all smelling. All of a sudden, he felt something on his back. And he says, "What is on my back?" And he lifted his shirt, and there was a long scratch mark right on his back. I mean, a fresh cut scratch mark. Now, I wanted to make sure that wherever I was with the Pickmans or anybody in the home, that we were all together, we were all in hindsight, that we could see each other, make sure everything was okay. I brought a police officer in there who was also a paramedic to make sure whatever happens, obviously we would have aid there, but also if anything did happen, is there any validity? When Tony got scratched, was it real? Was it a hoax? Was he bleeding? I wanted to make sure I had every aspect covered. He got that scratch mark. We went back. We went back around the house again, and then he was attacked again.
He was? Okay, so he showed you this first scratch, and you all witnessed that. So the second time there was actually another fresh scratch?
Yes, matter of fact, and this is the most amazing part. We're all standing there, and he had 3 scratch marks up here on his forehead.
Oh my God.
Right in front of us. I mean, we were all there to witness. It wasn't anything like, he went into the bathroom and he came out and he's like, something scratched me. I mean, we were right there. And one thing you have to know, especially when dealing with the paranormal, anything happens supernaturally, it happens so fast that you have to catch it because it's in a blink of an eye, something can happen. And that's how it happened. All of a sudden, bang, there was 3 different times, Tony was attacked right in front of our eyes, and that's what started, like, you know what? There's something going on
Okay,
here.
so Joe, what was happening? What were you guys all doing when he was getting scratched? Were you doing EVP work? Did you have your paranormal equipment out? What was happening while he was getting scratched?
Well, what we were doing was obviously when he got scratched, at the time that he was getting scratched, we wanted to make sure he was all right, wanted to bandage him up, we want to, make sure that, you take those precautions first. When we were taking pictures, we were running EVP sessions, had this digital thermometer out, had our EMS detectors, just making sure, as far as cold spots and experience and things like that, obviously you get a big temperature drop. It went from 68 degrees in the home to probably, I would say, just on an estimate, about 40 degrees. It just got cold. We all felt it, and bang, that's when he got attacked. It was just like a huge temperature drop. So dealing with the temperature drop, dealing with the different various smells, we knew that, okay, you know what? Regardless of what legends have, say, and in different interpretations, right now we can say, yes, 100%, there is paranormal activity in this home.
Wow. So what other evidence did you capture?
Well, what we ended up doing was, it was that day number 2, we went back again, we had, the news teams were there, and people were coming around, and, oh, you guys are filming, and you get a lot of the tourists that come around. We did a lot of meeting and greeting people when we were there, but when it came time to go back into the home and hit round number 2, we did more EVP sessions. Tony wasn't attacked. Matter of fact, Tony didn't come in that second day at all. We got a lot of orbs, and here's the amazing part. I never really put too much validity into a girl named Sallie. That was something that happened many, many years ago. But I will say this, the orbs that we captured, as a matter of fact, on my website, I do have those orbs from the investigation. There's an investigator, in one of the pictures that we have an investigator, and on the bottom right-hand corner is a huge, bright white orb. It looks like a full moon. And we blew it up. Obviously, we put it on the computer, and we blew it up, and we wanted to make sure, what was it? Orbs can be 100 different things. But there was a face inside that orb. And the most amazing thing to this orb is it was a woman. And you can see the hair, you can see the eyes, the nose, the smirk on where the cheekbone is, the chin. It literally looked like a little girl. Now, I'm not saying that was Sallie. I'm just saying that not only did Tony get attacked, we did get evidence of one of the orbs was a female, and it did appear to be a young child. Now, this is where it gets kind of tricky, and this is why when I co-authored that book, Sallie House Exposing the Beast Within, there's many, many people out there who the million-dollar question is it demonic? Is it human? Is it demonic? And it's teeter-tottered back and forth for many, many years.
Do you believe in demon? Do you believe it's a demon?
Well, I'll tell you. I went into the whole thing as not expecting anything to be demonic. I went into it like, okay, you know what? Let's debunk first. Let's work from there, and let's see what we can come up with. But I will say this. I believe there were multiple spirits. See, I believe Atchison, Kansas, that whole area, not just that home, but I believe that whole area was some sort of a portal that opened the door to that home.
Okay, a dark entity, but are you saying it's a dark entity, or are you saying it's a dynamic?
Well, as far as when you're dealing with demonic, anyways, I mean, you're always dealing with something that's dark. Some people receive it better as hearing is demonic. Some people who maybe not follow so much on the Christian faith may say, okay, that's not a demon. They'll use other words like dark entity, but no. Truthfully, to answer your question, I do believe there is a demonic force that's in the Sallie House that has attacked Tony Pickman and multiple investigators who go into that home still to this day. I mean, they almost use the Sallie House as like a scientific lab to just take investigators in, and they're doing so much damage by doing that because everybody now is getting not only physically attacked by going in the house, but also there's a psychological thing that also runs parallel with that. So if you don't get attacked physically there, it doesn't mean that you're not going to get the after effects much later on a psychological level that also attacks you. So it gets you physically and psychologically. It's a real tricky situation that happens in that home.
So this dark entity, do you believe that this dark entity was human at one time?
Honestly, I'll give you my opinion, and once again, in my opinion, I do believe that was not a human spirit at all. I do believe it's an inhuman spirit brought in through that vortex. Somehow, some way came through, and this is where I tie it in. I believe there was satanic things that were happening in that area that can trace back to a couple of homes many years ago. There's somebody, and that's for another story, and I'm gathering facts on that, but there was a pact made. There was a satanic pact made in that area that I believe actually allowed this entity to come in that home, in that area.
Joe, could it have possibly been done in that house as well?
Absolutely. It could have been done in that house. I believe it probably stems to that whole area, but I will say this. I know one thing. The investigators who have gone in that home after the Pickmans had moved out and left the home had all brought Ouija boards in there. They did a lot of rituals in there. They did incantations in there. There was a lot of stuff that was just going on in that house. So the residual effect and everything that surrounds that house was automatically put into the equation. So you've got running parallel multiple things going on through what people did in the past, what people have done recently, 10 years ago, even last year. There's always something that's happening that's keeping the energy in that home alive. That's what I truly believe.
So you think then, because of all these rituals and satanic things that were going on, the home was okay up until that point?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, like anything, I mean, first of all, when you're dealing with stuff that's happening to a family, you always have to start, before you go into believing and saying, okay, this is supernatural, this is paranormal, you have to look at what the people are doing. In any case that we've done, you always do a history, you always check on the family as far as generations. You stop there. And I believe somewhere down the line, through the tampering of occultism that happens, and it does happen, and many investigators are starting to see that more now today, that there was definitely things going on that brought about this demonic entity.
Very interesting. Now, you also, what has happened in your life since you've done the investigation?
Well, I will say this. After the investigation, one of the investigators that I had met with, which was Todd Bates from the Haunted Voices Radio Network, who was an EVP specialist, I sent a lot of EVPs to him for validation. He had top-of-the-line equipment at the time that could really, clean up EVPs. And one thing that he had said when he'd gone in the house, because he was part of everything that happened back in the days when the Pickmans were there as well, that he had a lot of detail on them, but I will say this. One of the investigators got himself involved with drugs, ended up in a rehab not too long after the Sallie House case. Another investigator who had gone in there ended up going through a divorce and a home foreclosure. My son was actually physically attacked by something that scratched him and flung him across the room.
Oh my God.
Across the room.
Is this in your home?
This was when he had left with he had gone with my mother and they went to my grandmother's house, and I got a phone call the next day because they had stayed overnight, and my mother called and said, "You're not going to believe this, but Joey," which my son, was attacked by something, and my mother took the picture because she had the disposable camera, and in the picture you could see the scratch mark on his forehead, same thing as what happened to Tony at the Sallie House, and a big white cloud of smoke surrounding his head. That's when I said, okay, wait a minute, could this spirit have attached itself and followed us? Absolutely. That started me to say, hey, you know what? There's got to come a time where you as an investigator have to seek out what your true motives are when you go into homes, when you want to help people. A lot of people perceive the paranormal world right now as a hobby, it's fun, it's on TV, media glorifies it. I believe a lot of stuff can be faked. I mean, I'm not doubting that. Not everything that happens is truly paranormal. But I do think that we're at a time where the veil between both worlds is so rich right now through all the paranormal investigating, all the craze that's going on, that it puts a lot of families, investigators, their families, their loved ones in jeopardy. And I believe that investigation, what I did in exposing what was in that home, writing a book about it, my son getting attacked was almost like a way to say, okay, this is what you get for doing that. I truly believe they were trying to fire a warning of what we had done in the home.
Have you been back to that house since?
I have not been back to that house since. I've done, multiple investigations outside there with our group, and, just doing what we do when families call up and they want help, and we validate it, and we'll do that. But as far as the Sallie House, no, I have not gone back there since, and I really have no reason to go back there. There's nobody living in the home. When we went there, we wanted to do an investigation. I also wanted to meet with the Pickmans. I wanted to see where they were at spiritually, and what was happening in Tony's life since he left the house. That was my main concern, was just to validate everything. But then, like I said, I mean, even writing the book on the Sallie House, when I talked about the investigation we did, I talked about not all the good things that we did in the house, but a lot of the things that went wrong, a lot of the stuff that we did wrong, that maybe our motives for going in the house at the time weren't really that positive. Like, maybe we were thinking, hey, you know what, maybe we'll get a reality show. Maybe we'll get exposure for doing that. So I truly believe that your motive and how you go about cases and what your true motive is for helping people really has a lot to do with how your life plays out in the supernatural world.
Now, you have evidence from, you've posted evidence on your website on the Sallie House?
Yes, I do have evidence on the Sallie House and also other cases, but a lot of stuff from the Sallie House. There's pictures of orbs there. We have the shadow people, and a bunch of little different things that we have going on there. There's even an orb for an investigation that actually captured a demonic-looking entity within the orb. It actually literally looks like a gargoyle. You'll be able to see that. As far as EVPs, I am having EVPs put up there. I got released to be able to stream some of the EVPs from various investigations. So we're building a nice little thing going on. We've got conferences planned for 2013, working with various demonologists in the paranormal world. So what we want to do really now, after doing the Sallie House, after going through trial and error, what we really want to do is, we don't want to really glorify ghost hunting per se, but we think it's time to do a paranormal awareness mind, with their thyroid. I mean, there's a lot of energy, and the electromagnetic frequencies do damage to you in the long run from various investigations when you're truly confronted in spirit, live spirit energy.
Right. Hey, our time is up, and I want to thank you so much, Joe. Now, Joe, would you please give everybody your website?
Okay, absolutely. You can go to my website. It's Joe Cetrone, Cetrone, joecetrone.com. You can go in there. A book is going to be released called Seduce that I'm working on. Well, it's actually done right now. It should be released as an ebook coming up in January. Talks a lot about the paranormal. It talks a lot about the deception and a lot of experiences in my life. If you need to get in touch with me, you can go to mercyfalls624 at yahoo.com. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions, send you EVPs, and work with you.
Joe, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. I hope everybody enjoyed Joe's interview, and to make sure you check out his website, and I have his book posted on the show, so if you would like to buy his book, I'm sure you'll be able to purchase that as well off his website. Joe, thank you so much for joining the show tonight. It was a pleasure to have you as my guest.
Thank you very much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Joe. Good night.
Good night.